It's time to play Where Will Marmaduke Do His Impromptu Review? Annoying card! Alright, this is a double manga review, which is what I usually do if I don't have like a single coherent 10-minute thesis and I just want to let you know what I'm reading and what I'm digging about it. But I actually came up with kind of an interesting theory while reading again, which is a point I'm sure has been made, but this is maybe a way of thinking about writing good stories that I've talked about, but I've never like nailed it down quite this way before. So the thing I'm thinking about is character versus plot driven stories, where if you think about fairy tales, those are often plot driven stories. Once upon a time, there was a girl whose mother died, right? You don't care about the inner monologue of Cinderella and her problems with the individual in society, right? And then in long form stories, these tend to become character driven. And I even thought of how like Spider-Man, an issue of Spider-Man will be plot driven. He's got to fight the bank robber. But if you kind of step back and look at the broad picture of Spider-Man, his story becomes about him as a character and what he struggles with. And what I love about manga is the individual chapters tend to have a good plot element to it, like an individual hook for that little bit of it to keep you invested. And then as you go from volume to volume, the character archetypes build up. Now, the thing about 3 and 4 is these are both kind of like building on the archetypes I've already talked about in previous issues. They're just sort of like repeating that or kind of putting the characters in different situations. So there's nothing like radical or new about these that I haven't talked about before. Barakamon is still about a young artist who's struggling with himself, where that's the other thing is plots usually have kind of like a cool setup. But a cool setup for a story isn't the same thing as a story. And I think that's where the character dimension comes in. So both of these have like a cool setup, but it's the personalities that give them their heart. So Barakamon's about an artist who's a calligrapher. He's struggling. He goes to a little podunk Japanese town where they speak in a funny dialect. And the children there kind of latch onto him, see him as a big brother figure, and he learns about his art by learning about normal life with everyday people. Again, is about a deeply antisocial young man who hits his head, and he and a girl their minds teleport back in time 3 years, and they have a chance to do their high school career again. And the antisocial boy has a chance to actually make friends and do something with his life in high school this time around. And so he joins like a manly cheerleading group called the Owen Don because he's really interested in the female captain. Both of these then kind of like, put them in comedic hijinks that carry those themes forward. But maybe what's interesting about this is even though they still are, I don't have much to say about these, I didn't say about Volume 1 and Volume 2, but by putting them in different situations, it's sort of like they give you a different angle on the character. So this is still about an antisocial young man. This is still about a struggling artist. But changing up the situation lets you maybe look at it from a different angle than you were looking at before. And it can just be entertaining. Like there can be an entertaining status quo where, they're just going on funny little adventures. They got the team together last time. They're building the team up this time. But the humor of it is what keeps you invested. And where was I going with this? There was a nice little bow to wrap all of this in pretty Christmas paper. They aren't pointless. It's not just pointlessly floating around in like comedic hijinks forever. In every little chapter, they're still giving you a dimension of the character which makes you feel like, okay, this is going somewhere. Now, it can be okay to do like Bugs Bunny style continuity where who cares about, Bugs Bunny's life story. You're watching it because it's funny and it's entertaining. But for stories like this, I think the promise that I am going somewhere with these characters, that their story has a middle and an end, is a big part of their appeal. That's been the death of some manga artists who it drags on and on. So that was the thesis. You can tune out now because I got the important part because I know you guys tune out early. Now I'm just going to like flip through this and show you like my observations. So I think what's beautiful about Captain Usami, Captain Girl, is that she is a girl who likes a mannish thing and is very committed to that mannish thing, but that doesn't necessarily make her the best at it. There's a great scene where she's making the antisocial kid run laps to teach him a lesson, but he has a gripe against his team. So he says, okay, so your punishment will be that the entire team will run laps with you. And she immediately falls behind and can barely keep up with the guys, even though she's putting herself daily through this incredibly rigorous physical exercise. She just can't physically keep up with the boys on the team. So why is she the leader? Because she's the most committed to it on a heart level. She was the only one who was keeping it going when all of the other guys weren't interested. She's the one who understands kind of the tradition of it and the importance of it, and it's really beautiful. She's a complicated, strong female character with a flaw of being judgmental. And then what's beautiful about this volume is you start seeing how both of them are judgmental in different ways. She is judgmental, and so she channels that into being commanding and a drill sergeant. Antisocial Boy is judgmental, and that's one of the reasons why he becomes so isolated, and he just has these explosions of anger. It really deserves its older teen rating. There's some like high school sexual politics stuff. They have like a funny little Owen Den guy who's named after a classic Japanese painter. There's so much little, Japanese cultural history. Okay, the reason I marked this is it's really important whenever they're doing the Owen Dan that it sells you on the idea that this is something impressive and emotionally impactful. So it's not just like a few little dance moves. There's something about their emotion or their energy that you can just feel with like the line drawing going up and going down and going all the way back. And Mitsuru Kubo is really good at subtle twisteroos. So it's not like I am your father twisteroos, but it'll be something like, oh, this guy, he's such a little jerk and a little sexist. But then you find out something about him that's maybe more complicated than your first impression of him. I really like how the antisocial kid, he's made progress. He's starting to kind of put his life in a better direction, but he's still antisocial. He still has like a lot of resentment for other people. He still is very judgmental, and he just assumes the worst all the time. So he thinks about how, hey, the captain's on this team with all these guys. Maybe she's just interested in sleeping around with guys, and she's not really into the Owen Dan. What he loves about her is she seems to be so committed to it. He kind of finds her raw enthusiasm inspiring. And there's a great twisteroo where she sort of challenges him, okay, you're the first person who's ever challenged my authority this directly, so I'm going to let you be the team captain for the day, and I will obey whatever order you give. And then she kind of jokes, but not any sex stuff, because it's got a pretty mature sense of humor to it. And so the bright idea he has is to merge the Owen Dan with the cheerleading club, because he can tell that they're supposed to be working together to cheer on the team, and there's like all of this anger and resentment to them. And so something like this works. It's situational comedy that makes sense if you understand the character. She's a boyish girl who loves a boyish thing. She hates cheerleaders. She hates girlish thing. She hates being perceived as a girl. Why is it funny? Because Antisocial Boy makes her do cheerleading, and her expression sells it. And look, it's Japanese cultural history time. Chihiro Iwasaki, the guy is named after a real painter named Chihiro Iwasaki, whose delicate watercolor illustrations of the real world artist and illustrator of the same name. It's just, yay, I love art history. So you learn so much about Japan through these things. I guess both of these are highest recommendations for me, but it kind of occurred to me that these are both send-ups of popular tropes within Japanese storytelling, and they're both kind of like doing a twisteroo on the character. Like, what if the young boy in the young boy's school story was antisocial, and makes it work then through execution. Barakamon, there was actually some really interesting artistic advice in this one. So let's see here. He gets hired to paint a boat, and this entire time he's had this problem of being too much of a perfectionist. He overthinks his art. He thinks about how to perform it perfectly and with lots of preparation, and then the kids just mess up the boat with their handprints, and sort of forces him to get over his neurotic attitude, because once they mess it up, then he realizes, oh, I have to cover it up by using like big splats of paint, and he ends up coming up with something that's really individualistic. So it's almost like if you mess up your piece of paper, you get past the mental hurdle of not being able to draw on it the first time. And here he is doing like the big over-the-top strokes to try to hide the handprints. I thought that was a clever look. What connects with me about that is oftentimes giving yourself a challenge as an artist can help you overcome like the mental block of, I don't know what to draw today. A lot of art teachers will do this, where they'll say you can draw, but you can only draw by using the letters P and B in your composition. You have to make an abstract painting only out of the letters P and B. And you think, oh no, how do I do that? And then you end up coming up with it, because the limitation actually forces you to think creatively and not think, oh, I don't know what to draw today, oh no. Another nice little example of Naru's kind of childish personality, uh, giving her like a lease on life. Like, which of these should I go with, this stick or that stick? Well, I'll go for this stick because it just feels right. And that can actually be a good artistic method, is go with what feels right while you're in the studio. And there's a nice relation between the Furuboshi girl, whatever it is. She's a girl who likes, she's sort of like closet into like yaoi manga, but she doesn't want anyone to know because she has a good girl reputation. She wants to be a manga artist, and so her journey as a manga artist is related to Honda's journey as a calligrapher, but he's a lot more type A than she is, and he doesn't deal with failure well. So she says, "Well, aren't you proud of getting second place? Don't you always get depressed when you get anything less than first place normally?" Because again, he's kind of like they're both about antisocial characters, but with like neurotic tendencies. But his neurotic tendency is all about competitiveness and being the best. So it's sort of like, can you channel that into a healthy thing? There's this beautiful scene of like these cultural dancers at a like a memorial ceremony, and there's like some variety where there are the little 4-panel comic strips, but then also these big over-the-top pages where they're just like showing you all the dress, and they're letting everything fill up the page. So the stylistic flexibility of this is just fantastic. Why did I mark this? Translation notes where they tell you all the weeb things. Oh, and these are always lovely. I won't rehash all this, but they always talk about like the real life people in Go-To who inspired it, and they'll talk about, you know, some of the little words from the dialect and how it gives it. I don't think I knew this, but the author is actually from the exact region where he set the story. So he's drawing from childhood experiences. It's just top. So 2 top recommended series. When I finish enough manga to do my 100 manga reviews in 10 minutes video, these 2 are both going to have a high place. Nothing. Well, I did come up with a thesis for that. So maybe I sort of short-sold myself. But try to think about. Here we go. Try to think about a character being different rather than just trying to think of a plot. It's not enough to just say, oh, the kids go back in time and they have to fix things from the past. All right. Well, then they go back in time, I guess. But if you try to think of what is a type of story I love, and then you change out the character. If you say, what if it was Rocky? But what if Rocky was a high school girl with deep sibling rivalry with her older brother and antisocial behavior, and she learns to be like Rocky, become a champion, right? That's a change up, because then by thinking of the character that differently, you then have to think about what would be different in the story, kind of using Rocky as your template. These are both artists who are looking at tropes within the manga industry, but then they're reimagining or reworking those tropes in a way that kind of seems fresh or is a little different from the standard brave high school boy, brilliant artist. They're doing something unique with that actually builds up to a story and gets you invested in that over the long run. 2 great series. That's it. We're going to cut off the tangents there. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribe Star, the best way to support this channel. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.